Hey, Alkias here. This video is going to be a little bit different from my normal stuff because it's essentially going to be a pitch for a feature, primarily for Unreal Engine, though I imagine other software, 3D software could use this too. But a pitch for a feature that I think would be really useful, and I have not found anyone. I haven't so far been able to find anything that does this. I am currently calling this feature Voxel Vector Coloring or Voxel Vector Painting. It's essentially it's essentially vertex painting that you do on 3D models, but in a voxelized 3D space. So the idea being, you would have a volume, and in this volume, you'd have scalars to break it up into a 3D grid, a series of points. But you would have normal math to determine. All right, this is going to be a 100 by 100 by 100, and then anything in that space would be, you understand what I'm saying. It's voxelized space. If I'm using the term voxelized right, I think I am. But essentially what you would do then is each one of you could paint or assign each one of these vectors an additional vector, essentially a color vector, an RGBA or even just RGB vector to it. And then as you move this volume around, each one of those points in space, stays with the volume or retains its color. I think that'd be pretty easy to do. The purpose of this, essentially for Unreal Engine, is essentially that you could then, through materials or other methods, grab that color point in space and use it as a color point in space. I'll give you the two examples that I'm thinking of for doing this, or for what I would use this for. One easy one is basically doing an alternative to lighting, doing vertex color style lighting that some old like PS1 games used to do, but making it more flexible and more non-destructive. So some like a lot of old PS1 games, like I said, did this. A big example. Let me see if I can pull up a full image of it. Spyro the Dragon, I know, did this in some of its games, where even though that's not PS1, there we go. But yeah, so I guess I'll pull it up. This sort of thing, where this right here, this is the unpainted, just the normal flat textured one, and then they did vertex painting on the actual vertices to create this mood lighting. It looks really, really cool, and honestly, I'd say it even looks better than some of like the proper point lighting that you can get in Unreal Engine in some cases, and it's obviously requires manual input, but it gets some really, really neat results. Now, the thing about this is that you have to, because it's vertex painting, it's painted onto the actual mesh. So if you move the mesh, the lighting goes with it, which sometimes can be fine. But if you want to move the mesh or add in new objects and you want the lighting to retain the way it is, you now have to repaint it. And it only really works on stuff that is built with this, kind of has the geometry built with this in mind. So if you're, say, working with pre-made assets or other assets and you want to have this sort of effect, it doesn't really, you can't really do it as well. I mean, you could, it depends on how the asset's modeled, but you have less control over it. Essentially, the way it would work is then by adding this method in, you could paint the points in space. Basically, you would this would mostly be black by default, right? But then right over here, right here, you would paint it yellow. And of course, because it's vector, it would just interpolate, like vertex painting does, interpolate out from the center, which is strong yellow, and back to black, and it just kind of blends between the two. What then would happen is you would have a material node, maybe a blueprint node as well, but a material node that's called something like, vector, voxelized vector point. I don't know. With its RGB outputs. And essentially what it would do is it would take, because we already in materials, we already have a world position node, which gets the position of any, just a mathematical position of a pixel in world space. I believe it's per pixel, it might not be, but essentially it's determined, it gets to the point of whatever is being shaded in the world, the vector point. So essentially what this would be doing is you're just taking this and you're then using some math to determine, all right, now what is based on this position in the world, what is the color at that point in the world based on the voxel painting. And another way I would add is you could add layers in. So, for example, you would add an integer input, and then you could add, say, I had I don't know, three objects here. Then I had a box here and a box. Let's say I had a box overlapping the entire thing and a box specifically here. And they modified different things. I wanted to use the color painting that I got there for different things. Well, then I could just mark this one as 0, this one as 1, and then by putting in the integer here, we would get, in this case, it would just be getting it from this because it's 0. You could use this for vertex painting, for lighting, like I showed here. In my own game, Circle of Orion, I have an example where this would be really useful, where I have 4 continents in the game. More like 3, but one of them split in half. And what I would like to do is each of these has a basic shader that adds grass and cliff sides to the world. But in order to differentiate each of these and make it feel like they're actually different places, I would love to be able to, and to be clear, just to make clear, they're all one landscape, so I can't use 4 different materials. I have it as one landscape. What I would like to be able to do is just... And I'm using the brushes for something else that doesn't really work with this, so I can't just have a different brush for each landscape. I would love to be able to add a box, like a voxel painted box, to around each of these locations. And then I could just paint each of those boxes the colors I want, even if it's like, in this case, I might just make the entire thing, that would all be red, that would all be green. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Or even, actually, I guess I could just add an entire box across all of it, and then I could, actually that would probably be better, I'd add a box over all of it, and point is, that way I could paint in essentially a value that I could use as a hue shader. So this, I could paint in just a different, you know what I mean, like I paint a different color, and that color I would then get in the material to reshade the grass here. So like the grass here would be a brighter green, the grass here would be a bit of a darker green, the grass over here would actually have a bit more of a blue or teal tint to it. And then the grass up here would have more of like a dirty brown yellow color. And it's all in one material, and then I could even, if I had one specific patches or areas where I wanted to modify that, maybe I wanted purple grass here. And I didn't want to use I didn't want to have a new brush because that comes with its own like advantages and disadvantages. This is another way I could do that. I have another method for, like, I'm modifying houses in a specific area, the coloring on the houses, but I don't want to make that a material because then it affects all the other instances of that house. And I'm wanting to do it on mass, so I wanted to have those same house models like at different points, but I want to have different colors. This is kind of the stuff I would use it for. So that is my pitch for this. I don't know if anything like this exists. I haven't been able to find it. I think it would be really, really useful, so I'm adding this. If anyone wants to either tell me if this exists, work on this themselves, or just for reference for myself, in case I want to work on this in my own time. So that's what I got.